The example of Latvia. Also in 1939, under Soviet threat, Latvian borders are forced open. On promise of friendship, Moscow gets bases. On June 16, 1940, the Soviets issue an ultimatum: submit to occupation or be attacked. On June 17th, the Red Army, in direct violation of previous treaties, moves in to complete the occupation of Latvia. From Russia, to initiate the new order, comes Andrei Vyshinsky to appoint a puppet government, with August Kirchenstein as prime minister. Russian technicians are sent in with the troops. Banners and signs prepared by subversives demand admittance of Latvia into the Soviet Union.
It was winter time when we left Latvia, and all we had was outside faucets to wash our faces. We were being transported in cattle cars with all, can you imagine, with all the smell and all the rubbish with cattle being transported back and forth. We were not being treated that sanitarily well.
The red flag flies over Latvia. We are reminded of an item in Molotov's speech to the Supreme Soviet in 1939, quote, "The nonsensical talk about the Sovietization of the Balkan countries, as some of organs of the foreign press charge."
The whole experience, 4 or 5 years in Austria, Germany, it went by very quickly. But then, when I look back all the experiences, it was really fighting back and telling me it must have been much, much longer. Yeah, the next experience, what would happen was we broke away from the DP camps. My father knew how to get us out of the situation, and there were a couple other families with us, 3 families. We broke away from those camps. And actually, we traveled by foot most of the time. We were pretty young there, and you know, kids can walk distances when they have to. And we came upon a small little tiny village called Strobnitz. And that was the first time for a number of years when I could sleep in white sheets, and that those very famously known beddings with look like a big giant pillow that's been tossed on you. We did wander around town. I remember talking to a postman who was laid off from the war. He had lost one leg, so he was on crutches, hopping, delivering the mail, but he couldn't see. Every young person was called in to serve the Nazis, and so we got to learn a little bit German, you know, not much, but little German, and we could get around. I personally suffered some earache, because during those times when we were traveling in those cattle cars, we were tossed out in a railroad station to change cattle cars. We were sleeping in between doorways with lots of cold air in wintertime coming and going. And I always am the kind of person, I have to be doing something to feel good. Either I'm drawing or knitting or crocheting or macrameing or something. I was knitting. I've forgotten that. Actually, I was knitting, and not having showers and the right kind of upkeep. My ear looked like it needed unplugging, and I used the knitting needle to do it. And I struck a wrong chord. And in this little town, later on, I had an earache developing. And my father somehow was able to get a hold of toboggan, not a toboggan, what's in wintertime you sled?
Toboggan?
Toboggan, yeah. He got the toboggan and put me on it, and was, I don't know how many miles, but it was quite some distance between our town and where the hospital was. So he drove me out there, and because I was not a German, not speaking German, I was put in a room where there were pregnant women waiting to give birth, and some of them already had babies. It was Christmas time. Imagine how cold it was on that toboggan. And I was put in that room with babies crying constantly, and I had my earache. But the one nice thing I remember, we had a Christmas tree and decorations from cheese wrappers. We would put little something to decorate, cheese wrappers. Well, there was a doctor in the main hospital that heard about me, that I was in there, a kid by myself there. And he had the heart and put me in the main big building in white sheets and all. So I was very happy to be transferred to the real hospital. We did leave Strobnitz. We kept telling the Germans, communists are coming. They are not that great as you might think. You better get going. You better get moving. We're going to be going. And my father arranged us and 2 other families to move on from this nice, comfortable little situation. We went to Linz, a big city. It was French zone where we were then. And Moroccans were part of it in the French zone. And they looked for the women to rape them. And father wanted to hide my mother outside with a sheet to lowering through the window. Mother wouldn't do it, wouldn't go out in the dark there. But father pushed her under the bed and saved her. So mother was never touched, but one of the women were, and she was horribly, horribly stressed out afterwards. So that was really near the end of the war, when we were in the cellar waiting for the lot of sirens blowing, and every time there's a siren, they let you know planes are about dropping bombs. We were in the cellar, waiting and waiting for the sirens to pass, thinking the bombing was happening. learn. The war is over.
Peace is returned to earth, and for the victor it is a day for rejoicing. 6 years of toil, sweat, and tears, and now peace comes to England. Here in America, our manner of spontaneous celebration. These are the Russians as they herald the end of the war. Crowded streets, public squares packed full in Amsterdam, in Prague, in Warsaw, to celebrate the return of peace. Paris on the day of liberation. An end to gloom and despair.
So the war was over.
So you were in.
And we could come and go as we please. And our intention was to get to American zone, because there we were in the French zone.
So you
And
were in.
we want to go to cross over to American zone. And we walked and walked and walked. I remember I was so tired out and nowhere to sleep, no bedding, no nothing. And we kept going. And Father did some double talk and a lot of talking in why we wanted to cross over. And we were allowed to cross over to American zone. See, the zones were not really plotted out. They were kind of where French zone was and where American zone was. And as Father followed politics pretty closely, and so he saw where the American zone was going to be. And would you believe it? It's a town where Jim had a friend here in America studying from Campton. That town where we stayed, found out it was set up a camping ground from Americans. Americans really were very kind to set us up with food and shelter and even recreation and everything. And for the next couple years, we were very comfortably set up in this camping. Latvians, as well as Lithuanians, Estonians, are very culturally minded people. They provided a few books that they shared among themselves. They shared with other people. We set up schooling, sharing one book, learning a little bit of English. But it was English I couldn't use today. But really learning English came much later. In the meantime, while we were in Germany, we want to move on. We didn't want to stay on in Germany. We want to go to America. And we found a way, Church World Service, that was helping us. They have an international organization that does very well for displaced persons. So we were lucky to be accepted, Church World Service, helping us.
In Germany.
In Germany. That is to pay for the boating. We got on a boat. Nobody traveled by plane those days. We got on a boat And I was the only one that didn't get sick. My sisters got sick and couldn't take a bite of food at all. They just ran to the cafeteria and picked up the fruit and ran back to the bedding. I was the only one that made friends and did some walking around and having a little fun for change. And food, which we hadn't had for years, you know. The tables were filled with breakfast food and everything. Well, we were pretty sad cases, you know, not knowing what's going to happen, whether they're going to send us, Americans going to send us back to Germany or let us in. We came just with clothes on our backs, and through Ellis Island actually. And Father, he was sick in his early years with tuberculosis, but which was taken care of. He did stay in sanatorium, but that was taken care of. But Americans are very particular with anybody coming in the United States with any sickness. As a matter of fact, if something had shown in his lungs, they want to know. And so we were in Ellis Island for a few weeks to make sure Father was okay. He was put in a certain hospital area by himself. When the rest of the family, we had to wait out in another part.
Their dream of going home had been taken over as an Allied project. The military supplied a name to describe those who had been torn from their homes and starved and beaten. They were known now as displaced persons.
When we came in the United States, he was such a perfectionist with finances in that he figured out how to get us a house. In 10 years, house he had scot-free, no mortgage, no nothing. In 10 years' time, how many families are able to say they lived in a house completely free from any mortgages or anything? So he was, in 10 years' time, he was able to do that. Later on, he had money put in 3 banks. We had to deal with 3 banks after he passed away. 3 banks we had to scoop up whatever he had put down. And not only did he had scot-free the house, he even had money saved for the 3 of us. We had $30,000 each of us after he passed away. How many people can say that? How many parents can leave their children that who have come over with nothing?
For America's greatest strength, look to the people who inhabit this land, to the life they have made for themselves and their children. Theirs is a proud heritage whose roots are embedded deep in the institutions and traditions established when freedom was but a dream and a hope hidden in the hearts of the first Americans.